Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Tuesday Coaches Calls. These shows are absolutely live. My name is Kate. I'm your Chief Player Ambassador. Some of you may know me as Crypto Kate. And with me today, I have NCL Commissioner Dan Manson.
Thank you, Kate. It's great to be on the show.
So today we're going to have my least favorite conversation. We're going to talk about the rules and code of ethics. And I have a blog coming out on Friday called Let's Talk About the Elephant in the Room, How Not to Cheat in the NCL Games. So this show kind of pairs with that blog. So check it out on Friday. But today we're going to answer your questions about what you can and can't do as a coach to make sure that you don't violate any of the guidelines and to make sure that your players don't get pulled off the leaderboard. If your players get caught for cheating, we have a wonderful cheating audit. Those boys blow me away with how they're able to catch people. And we're going to talk about how not to get flagged. And if you don't cheat, you don't get flagged.
It really boils down to something simple. Before the game, talk as much as you want, share as much as you want. After the game, talk as much as you want, share as much as you want. During the game, do not talk to anyone, especially the individual game. Do not share with anyone. You don't get anyone's help. You can go into Slack, but Slack is more for
complaining,
just knowing that or they're trying to struggle as well. You're not alone in the struggle.
Yeah, a lot of times the Slack is just, if people are on the leaderboard and the player ambassadors are like neck and neck, like we'll tease a couple of the players that we know. I know we have a couple of players that are like always trying to like just one up us. Players will talk about like, oh my God, Crypto 5 is like killing me, or log analysis destroyed my accuracy, or just kind of like venting without going into any of the challenge questions. You can talk about the challenge by name without going into any of the details. You can't talk about tools. You can't talk about methodologies. You can't talk about settings or parameters or anything that might give someone a competitive edge. The blog that I have coming out on Friday talks about the games being open. Games that are open are the preseason, the individual game, and the team game. Basically, if there is a countdown timer active, except for the gym, ignore the gym, it's separate. If there is a countdown timer that is active, the games are open, and anything that you do matters. Some of the questions that I get from coaches is, can I give instruction or tips or guidance or advice when the games are active? No. Any other time? Yes, please. It is 100% encouraged that you help your students, you prepare them. Doing a debrief after is amazing. So, there are lots of times to talk to your students, just not during the games. Another thing that I run into a lot is people ask me like, oh, who can I talk to during the team game, right? Because that's a team. You're supposed to talk to people. If you have multiple teams at your school, those teams can't talk to each other.
Right.
And the way that you can find out who you can talk to is to go into your Skyline dashboard. It's like down a little on the right. My blog is going to have a screen cap when it comes out on Friday. There's going to be a list of names of people on your team. That's who you can talk to. Anyone not on that list, you cannot talk to. And coaches cannot compete in team. So you can't help any of your teams if you have multiple during the team games. I know it sounds like, oh no, big taboo, but I promise this is the best for your students. The more that we can keep the integrity of the games, the more that recruiters can believe the scouting reports and know that if a student did well in the games, they're going to do well on the job. The more we can keep that integrity, the better opportunities you're going to have for your students. Doug asks, can the students use the web as a resource? Absolutely, as long as they are searching themselves. In my coaching guide, I talk about it all the time. I call open source intelligence, like, just effing Google it. Like, I've publicly proposed this alternate title. I guess OSINT is a little bit better and more professional,
I want to add something to that. So, yes, students can use the web as a resource, but students cannot use the web as a resource to talk to other students.
Absolutely. And they can only use public resources. So if you have to type in a password to get to it, you're not supposed to use it. You're supposed to use, open source intelligence for all of the challenges. So I know that some schools will keep like a repository of old challenges and directions on how to solve that, and they're not supposed to use that during the games. And if they're caught, they'll be pulled from the leaderboard. They'll be put in the pewter bracket, which is unranked, and they do not get a scouting report. And let's be honest, that scouting report is what's really important. Students who get put into pewter have previously tried to put like, oh, I scored 17th place in the competition, but they're still pulled from the leaderboard at the end of the game. So if your employer goes to verify that, you're not going to be on the list. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. If they are demoted to pewter, you can also end up in pewter if you forget to participate in preseason. Preseason is very important. That's how we decide which players go into each bracket. And brackets are just so that you have the best opportunity to have really successful scores. So the top 15% of all players go in gold. The next 35 go in bronze, and then the bottom 50% are in, I'm sorry, I messed that up. It goes gold, silver, and then bronze. But the bottom 50% is bronze, and it's really great because you can score really high in bronze as a new player. And that's something that I had to do when I first started out. I didn't win in the overall. I just did really good in my bracket, and I only posted my bracket scores at first. But
we have some questions here. First of all, John makes a great clarification. Asking for help on the web is not the same as using web resources. Using web resources good, asking for help on the web bad. Then Stephen Kangas says, what value is a scouting report to high school students? Well, I think a scouting report is something for everyone to take advantage of. If you're a high school student, it shows your commitment. It's the same thing that if you're a college student, except you're doing it younger. I really believe that every high school student should play NCL, especially if they're playing Cyber Patriot.
We have a really good blog that just came out from one of our new ambassadors. I think Tristan wrote it. He's our high school ambassador. He's the only person on the team who's still in high school. He plays as a high school student. He competes on a college team. And he wrote why, I think it's something like why you should stop everything you're doing and play NCL right now if you're a high school student. And it really goes into how it can help high school students and get them ahead. But most importantly, I think what recruiters are looking for is actually growth over time. So for me, I didn't have very high scores when I got hired at Tabora. Like I was just starting to do like okay in the games. I wasn't really like a top competitor at that point. And what they saw is that I could, just continue to grow exponentially as I continue to play in the games. So anytime that you can show growth and that you learn, that is really what the industry is looking for, because our field changes every day. What you know right now is going to be completely irrelevant in 25 years. And if you want a career in this opportunity, you have to be able to grow and change. So I think it's really important that students are able to show growth over time more than I scored really high. If you score really high and continue to score really high, that's fantastic. We love those players, and they're so much fun to hang out with. And usually those are the players that are the most willing to help coach and teach other players when the games are not open. But having that scouting report to show that you've continued to grow over time is so important. And it's not really like where you ranked. It's really how much of each learning category are you able to complete each season. So if you go from I completed 20% of crypto and 30% of network traffic and 20% of log analysis up to like I did 70% in each thing, that matters so much more than where you ranked on the board, because you can't control other players, but you control how much you grow.
I want to add another reason for high school players to participate in NCL. I went to the Troy High School Cyber Banquet a little over a month ago, and they had all the seniors come up and say, how many years have they played cyber? Well, there are students that are seniors that played cyber for 6 years, and they started off with Cyber Patriot, then they moved on to both Cyber Patriot and NCL. The bonding that takes place when you're doing this together in high school year after year is incredible. And the students who play cyber together are going to develop really cool friendships together. So the social aspect to me is very valuable. So Stephen now says, The problem I'm having with my high school students is they're not engaging in individual games, no matter which ones. They do on Cyber Patriot, NICE, and other CTF when they're able to gather together. What I have, when I have only one student out of 20 doing NCL, well, because of not team games, it's a disappointing barrier. I'd love to talk to your students sometime, Stephen. I'd love to talk with you more about it, because I really believe that if you're playing Cyber Patriot, you should be playing NCL. The team aspect is there for NCL. You can always play the team game at the end of the season, but there's a lot of value in testing your individual skills in a cyber game.
For me, when I was teaching high school, it was all about getting them to be competitive with each other. Teaching them that, like, oh, you'll be better at team if you know where your strengths and weaknesses are. So for example, when I build a team, I'm always looking to build a team based on everybody's skill sets. So for example, when I was first building the player ambassador team, I was only allowed to bring on a few people. So I selected Gina, who's amazing at organization, and she was going to run and lead the team, and I knew that she was going to be the person who could coordinate among everybody. And while I might have the ideas, I'm really bad at communication, so I picked someone who had a skill that I wasn't good at. Next, I picked John because I hate network traffic analysis. It's the bane of my existence. I get it done, but I don't enjoy it, and John loves it. And then I picked Web Witch because she's stellar at reverse engineering. So really, I used the individual games to test everybody's skills and figure out what everyone was good at. And then I wanted to pair up with people who had a skill that I didn't have. Even when I first started out, I would be like, oh, I'm really good at crypto. I'll teach you crypto if you teach me network traffic analysis. And that's how I got good in the games, was using the individual to figure out where my strengths and weaknesses are. And then to follow up with, I want to hang out with you and be on your team because you're good at something I'm not. And I think sort of that test of yourself is an important element. So Stephen also says that I want my students playing NCL. We've tried to get past this barrier for 3 years now, and I need a way to get them used to NCL so that by the time they're seniors, they'll be looking forward to every NCL season. I mean, it's sort of one of those things for me where you have to dive in head first and go for it. You know, try to find one of the web shows that we've done that you think would get them really encouraged or excited. We did live coaching last season, so we have a whole series of Thursday shows on every topic. We have blogs on like almost everything, and if we don't have a blog on it, it's coming out this season. So you can also show them some of my talks. I think I've done a ton of presentations. Anything labeled NoobSec to Cyber Champion, that's sort of like my little branding. That was my first technical workshop I'd ever done. And I called Dan and I said, Dan, I'm going to do a workshop. I'm going to steal all of your content. It's really important. You're not allowed to say no. Please don't sue me. And Dan offered to help, and I was able to get people into the games for their first time. So using the gym to get them exposed, to teach them how to play by themselves, teach them to test themselves, you know, talk to them about, you know, overcoming doubt and fear and things like that. I can't tell you how much I didn't want to do NCL, but I had a teacher who basically like found whatever motivation I needed to get going, and I tried really, really, really hard, and I was like, I'm going to go in and just do my best. What's the worst that can happen? Well, how I scored is about the worst that can happen. I'm pretty sure the only people I beat were the ones who didn't log in. But I learned what I was good at and what I was bad at. And at first, I was bad at everything. So I picked one thing and I got good at that. And then I picked another thing and I got good at that. You know, people who only want to compete in teams, they're never going to grow as individuals. And in the workforce, you can't always work as a team. So you really have to be prepared to go out and solve challenges by yourself.
Do we want to get back to the ethics for coaches?
Absolutely. So basically, like, the easiest way to remember is if there's a competition happening, you know, you can't really do anything. Your hands are tied as a coach, and you kind of have to, you know, watch and see, you know, where their strengths and weaknesses are. Again, you can use this as an assessment of what you can do to help them grow over time, especially if you're going to be their teacher for more than 1 year. I think that's so important for you to have that insight into where, you know, as students, their strengths and weaknesses are. When I when I was a teacher, I refused to not have my students play in the games because I needed that to assess how I was doing and how well they were understanding the concepts that I was sharing with them. I put a quote that I'm pretty proud of in my blog. I made a Fight Club parody. So the first rule of the NCL games is you do not talk about the NCL games during the games. The second rule of the NCL games is that you do not talk about the NCL games during the games. The third rule of the NCL games, if someone yells, "Can you give me a hint?" goes to a teammate or friend for help, taps out and gives up, the game is over. You're very likely to get caught in our cheating audit. The fourth rule, only one student per account during preseason individual games and only 1 to 7 per team during the team games. And that's Fight Club, sort of. Dan just posted the link to the NCL ethics, behavior, and rules of conduct. Is there any highlights from that you want to share, Dan?
Yes. At the beginning, we talk about all NCL participants are to behave in a manner befitting professional cybersecurity practitioners during NCL games. But I want to get down to the point on that involves the coaches. Let me get over to there. The coach is important. We sometimes get players that don't have coaches, but if there's ever a violation of rules, we want to talk to the coach. We don't want to talk directly to the players. We want the players to be talking to the coach and the coaches to be talking to us.
So Dan and I actually just talked about this because I'm very passionate about the opportunity for anyone to start their own team, right? I coached every team that I was on, but I couldn't be an official coach because I was also a player. It's really important that if you're gonna go play without a coach, don't get in trouble. Like, don't cheat. I know that sounds terrible, but if you are gonna be, on your own, don't get caught. Like, don't get in trouble. Don't share flags. Don't share methodologies. Also, do not help your friends in the public cyber Skyline Slack. Like, we watch that. We're there. But if you do get in trouble, you do have to find a coach. There's no reason if you're in trouble that your school or an advisor or a professional that's overseeing you should not be involved because, at that point, if you've already violated the rules of conduct, like, you obviously need supervision. Dan's sharing a couple of key points. Dan, do you want to talk about any of that?
Right. It boils down to something simple. Before the game, you can talk with each other, you can strategize, you can bounce ideas off. After the game, you can do that. You should not talk to anyone else during the game.
About anything related to the game. Just don't do it. If you're not sure if you should do it, if you have like that little moral voice that says, is this allowed? Is this okay? The answer is no. No, it's not. Just trust that.
It's really important that the players follow this because we strongly believe in the integrity of the game. We strongly believe that all the scores reflect what the individual players do in the individual game and what a team does in the team game. And if we find that there's evidence that this has been violated, we will take action. Now, we want to know your reasoning. If we send you an email, if we send a coach an email, if we send the players the email, we want to know if there's a question that you have. So it's not a case where we immediately impose the penalty. We want to hear from you to see if there's a justification, to see if there's a reason. But
do you want to talk about what the order of operations is for the appeals process before we go into like the details?
Yeah. So we send emails to the coaches regarding the players, identifying the players, and then we say to the coach, you're going to be the one that needs to respond to us. Then we send the email to the individual players saying that we have evidence of a violation. But the player needs to be communicating with their coach, and then the coach needs to be communicating with us. That's the process.
So Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about why we don't allow players to appeal for themselves?
We really believe in the importance of the coach in the game. We believe in the responsibility of a coach. A coach is responsible for enforcing integrity of their players in the game. So we want the coach to be the point of contact for us.
Now, we have had scenarios, without calling any specifics, where coaches were involved in the cheating. Do you want to talk about that? And,
Well,
without calling anyone out.
To me, it's a basic education process about how the game is played.
It goes along to the same things that you hold up in your classrooms. What if somebody turned in a plagiarized report? How would you respond to that? I would expect you to respond to your students violating the rules in the same manner, because it's the same ethics problem. And most of these kids, they want to go into forensics, or they want to go into pen testing, or they want to go into red teaming. And if you violate your contracts or your code of ethics at that point, that's career ending.
The lessons you learn from playing NCL apply to the rest of your career.
Absolutely. So Dan, do you have anything to add? People in the audience, do you have any questions, comments, concerns? I know this isn't really a fun show. This is always the show that I dread, but I think it's an important topic that we need to cover. I think coaches need to understand that they're held to the same code of ethics as our students. And here's another question that I got one time that blew my mind. No. You cannot let your students practice in your account and then go play the games. No. I don't know why someone thought that was okay, but I've been asked that. No.
I do want to emphasize that's a very small percentage of players that have violations. We're talking about usually less than 1% of the player population, 1% of the team population that get flagged for violations. But when we do find a violation, we take it seriously.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not that it's, an absorbent amount. But it has been people on the leaderboard, and I think that is really what hurts me the most. I get real, whew, Dan has seen me. I get my heart absolutely broken every time I find out that someone got flagged by the cheating audit. And sometimes Rage Kate comes out and I'm like, report them to their school for academic integrity violations. And obviously that's not what we do, because we're not all angry Kate, but it really does hurt me to the core, because I want this competition to mean something. I want this competition to be able to, get them jobs. That's what it should do. Dan, there's a question from Hush, one of our player ambassadors, who would like to know, what would you say would be the best way for a coach to handle a situation like this of an individual that they are coaching? Dan?
Well, I think, first of all, you start before. As soon as you know that they are a player that you're the coach for, you need to educate them on the ethics and rules of playing. A coach, just like a syllabus, when you start a class, you learn what the syllabus is. You learn what the rules of the class are. I was department chair 3 times, and I always looked at the syllabus as the contract between the teacher and the student. So you can look at the ethics and ethical behavior document as a contract that is similar to a syllabus, and that's what you have to follow. So the coach needs to be proactive. It doesn't need to take much time, but the coach needs to take the lead in having the players understand what the rules of the game are.
Fred, one of our player ambassadors, who's actually an instructor at a high school, he teaches an all-girls high school class that competes in a ton of competitions. They might do more CTFs than me. It's very impressive. From sort of the faculty view, he said to liken it to an academic integrity violation. All students should have seen one. They should be familiar with it. They know what happens if they get caught cheating in a test. They know what happens if they turn in a plagiarized report. It's really not different. So if you just kind of treat it like that, that's however your school handles it, that's going to be different, school to school, but that's sort of the best metric for what to do. So I saw that Stephen asked, could we do a speaker call with the high school club students? I'm really passionate about getting high schools involved, so I can potentially set something up. I don't know if I'm available February 26th because RSA. Very excited, going. Thank you, NCL and WESIS and Tamora and everybody's helping make that happen because that's one of my goal conferences. But we could set something up to have them have sort of an interaction, or we can do another live show with availability that works, that they can come hang out. Also, we do Thursday Night Live coaching every single week. Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern. I highly recommend that they just get on there. They can talk to us. They can ask us any questions that they have. We usually have a topic just like the show. The show is supposed to be about rules and code of ethics, but we do talk about other things. But the best thing that I can recommend is just to hang out with us on Thursday nights. You have different ambassadors every week. We're all super passionate about it. We have a team of 12 now. We have 12 people who spend their time, their free time, trying to convince people that this is the best thing for them. They're constantly writing coaching content. They're constantly doing these live shows. So while we could try to set something up, I think the best thing they could do is just come join our community and be a part of everything that NCL is. These coaching calls are a little quiet because they're in the middle of the day, they're targeted to coaches, there's less players, there's fewer coaches than there are players. So this is a smaller population. It's a little bit quieter of a show. But if you come with us on Thursday nights, the chat doesn't stop. We can't keep up with it. We get more questions than we can answer, and we still answer them all somehow. So the best thing I can recommend, rather than having, a show where we just talk to your students to try to convince them, have them hang out with us. We're fantastic. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I have an amazing freaking team, and they're infectious with their enthusiasm. Everyone thought I was excited, but everyone else is more excited than I am. It's really worth it rather than us, have one person come to you. Come meet all of us. We're a big family.
Cool.
So if there's no more questions specifically about rules and code of ethics, we will wrap this up. Like I said, these Tuesday calls are a little bit shorter. They're directed to coaches. So if you have questions about coaching, how to do stuff, please let us know. Our next show is next Tuesday, February 11th, and it's what is an NCL coach and how to sign up and participate as a coach. It's, some of our tips and tricks for awesome coaching. It's just sort of a general welcome show. We are still building out our Tuesday shows, but absolutely, if you can, even as a coach, check out our Thursday night calls. They are the most fun. I look forward to them all week. I almost never miss them. I did last week's show from a hotel room because I couldn't bear to not be a part of the show. It's really exciting, and if you want your students to catch the NCL bug, I can't recommend anything more than the live show. I also have a blog that I pinned to the top of my blog, so if you go to cryptokate.com, it's what is the National Cyber League and why is it better than a Norwegian cruise? Because if you go to ncl.com, it's Norwegian Cruise Line. So that's why we're nationalcyberleague.org. But that's also a great place to start. And then we do have the coaching guide with a ton of resources under workshops on my page. My best friend said in Slack over here that now everybody gets to see Rage Kate. But hi, friends. I'm really a nice person, and the only thing that really makes me angry is when people take advantage of the system, when people cheat, when people get caught for cheating. And if I know the player and I've talked to the player in Slack, and I feel like a lot of the players are my friends, I love all of them. So it really does, it's kind of the worst thing that I think can happen. And it makes me really sad. So that's why we're doing these shows. It's a rough topic, but we want people to understand.
And I want to point out that there are times where someone is new to the game and they don't really understand all these, rules about not sharing. And so they get themselves in trouble, but it may not even be something they're intentionally trying to do to take advantage of the game. So we understand that, there are people that make mistakes, and we try to have some compassion in, a little bit of flexibility with that.
That's
So
why Dan makes all those judgments and not me, because I'm like, send them to pewter.
So,
Violations.
it's not that we take pleasure in finding people who are sharing and imposing a penalty. It's not something that's fun for us to do. But it's something we do because we really believe in keeping the integrity of the game. There's a reason why.
Absolutely. And some of the things that the ambassadors do, like we talk to companies all the time and we try to tell them that, like, hey, if you're recruiting people and you see NCL on their resume, like ask them for their scouting report. We're trying to get little resume stickers that we can send out to players that they can stick on their resume. That
the scouting report has value, and
Absolutely.
we want to keep that value.
And unfortunately, if people are taking advantage of the system or flag sharing or helping each other, then, we have no way to make it as important as it is. So with that, we're going to wrap up. I know it's not the most happy note, but we hope this helps. We hope that, this helps to explain what the coach's role is and where you guys fall. If you have any questions, please always reach out to the ambassadors, reach out to NCL. Whatever it takes, we're here to help and support you and make sure that your players are ranking at the top of the leaderboard, and that, nobody's in trouble. We're here to help. So with that, happy Tuesday. Hopefully we'll see you guys on Thursday.